Magliocchetti returns to the airwaves here, and you can also check out the visual. Go to @JeffMax5490 on Twitter if you'd like. Geoff, welcome to the show, our New York Jets guru and insider.
Paul, it's great to be back. How you doing this week?
Phenomenal. And as a diehard football fan, people say that NFL has an off season, but I disagree. After all the topics we saw this week, I want to spin them to see how they affect the Jets. Specifically, let's go with the column you wrote earlier this week about the Jets avoiding a potential distraction with the Kareem Hunt signing. Obviously, he's an all-world talent, but with Mike McCagnon and his wife's history with domestic violence, and not to say they've been involved in it, but her standing in defending, I'm not doing a very good job of saying this, but Mike McCagnon's wife does a wonderful job supporting domestic violence victims. And they've done a wonderful job of that, which obviously is a red flag that the Jets probably wouldn't be in the market of Kareem Hunt. But nonetheless, you did write a column about the Jets potentially avoiding this distraction. Please go on.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Paul. Betty does a great job. Betty McCagnon does a great job with domestic violence victims, and we applaud her for the effort. She does a fantastic job. Keep up the great work, Betty. But in terms of the Jets and Kareem Hunt, this was a distraction that the Jets avoided and frankly did not need right now. What the Jets are entering is one of the more crucial spots in their franchise timeline. They have an unworldly talent potentially on both sides in the ball. On offense, it's Sam Darnold, and on defense, it's Jamal Adams. But at the same time, 51 other guys need to step up and play to their full potential every Sunday afternoon. Now, on paper, Kareem Hunt would have been, a bit of a difference maker for the Jets, give Darnold a bit of a run threat. But here's the thing. The Jets need as little distractions as possible. Now, put aside your thoughts right now about Kareem Hunt and whether he deserves a second chance. It was a heinous act he did, and the Browns are going to deal with some form of discipline from the league sooner or later, be it a suspension, be it anything right now. So put those thoughts aside for the time being, because the Jets right now, they are in a place where they could use as little distraction as possible right now. They cannot afford to bring this guy in and deal with these questions all year, deal with the implications of it. So this was a good move by the Jets. They've been busy this offseason already because they granted Quincy Enunwa that 4-year extension. Now is a good way to start the offseason before it really ever got started. They did that going into late December's final game against New England Patriots. They hired a new coaching staff and everything. They released Spencer Long. But this inactivity was for the best. You don't need to deal with any of this right now. You really don't want to be the team that, that has to do extensive research to discover whether or not Hunt truly deserves a second chance. So, you know what? The Jets need as little distractions as they can right now. Team chemistry is going to be tough next year, I believe, as is, because the Jets have about 36 players now hitting free agency, and the roster could look drastically different come week 1 in September. So the last thing you need is one more distraction to take away what could be a great season of building for a future playoff squad.
Distraction recruits that the Jets could be targeting this offseason, both in free agency and potentially in trade. And, of course, Antonio Brown, that's the other big news this week, as he announced his farewell to the Steelers, despite the fact of having 3 more years on his contract. Adam Schefter revealed that he did make his trade demands public with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the other guy is Le'Veon Bell, who, obviously he's had a wide array of issues with marijuana, and of course he did sit out the entire last season and forfeited the $14 million of his contract by not playing in any of those games. Would the Jets entertain any of those, either or both of those potential distractions, weighing also on the other side the talent that they could bring in?
I think they would entertain at least the thought of bringing him in, because those distractions, they're nothing compared to the mess that Hunt finds himself in right now. The NFL has an increasingly disturbing problem with domestic violence. It's gotten, unfortunately, far more prevalent, and it's just not a good situation. It's not something you want to deal with. I mean, look at the Giants not even that too long ago. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, two years ago, they were dealing with the aftermath of the heinous Josh Brown after situation where, they knew something was going on there and nonetheless signed him to another deal. The Jets have to avoid things like that, not just for, the moral implications of it, but for the distraction implications of it as well. But I do believe they're at least going to make an attempt at both Bell and Brown, their talents, and yes, they've been, in the news for all the wrong reasons lately, but I think they're at least going to make an attempt at them. Now, what you have to do to be careful at the Jets, it's like Spider-Man's Uncle Ben once famously said, with great power comes great responsibility. And the Jets definitely have that power to the tune of just under $96 million in cap space. So they need to spend this money wisely if they want to get back to the top. And what I'm saying by this is they should not go all out. They should not dedicate a majority of that money, well, maybe not a majority, but a good portion of it, into bringing these guys in. You need to surround yourself. Like I said, the Jets are now dealing with 36 free agents. They released Spencer Long. He made 37, but he was picked up by the Buffalo Bills earlier this week. So you have 36 free agents that you have to deal with. That's potentially, obviously, I think they're going to bring some guys back. Jason Myers, of course, is probably one of those guys they're going to bring back, the kicker being a free agent, of course. The Jets have potentially 36 new roster spots that are going to be filled by new names that were not with the organization last year. So what the Jets need to do is find a way that each of these guys, each of these 36 names, are going to contribute in some way to the development of both Sam Darnold and Jamal Adams. They need to work out well, so you should not splurge everything on one or two guys. If you manage to get some sort of deal for him, perfect. Bring him in, bring it on, everything will work out. Let's see what happens on the field. But if you're in a situation where, you're overpaying for a single guy, it's not going to end well for you.
And one other point of interest, again, Geoff Magliocchetti, our Jets guru for EliteSportsNewYork.com. You can follow him on Twitter at JeffMax5490. The big other thing with this, Geoff, is the draft. And that's another way that you can build your foundation, you can build your team. And Kyler Murray earlier this week announced that he is firmly and fully committed to football. That's got to be good news for this Jet squad.
I think it is. I think the best news of all for it comes in this area's minor league baseball teams, particularly the short season AAA teams, the Brooklyn Cyclones and the Staten Island Yankees. No chance of Kyler Murray playing for Oakland's affiliate in Vermont. So I think they're the biggest New York winners of all this. But in terms of the Jets, this creates a very interesting situation. How did they get Sam Darnold? Simple. They traded up for him. They traded up with the Indianapolis Colts for that number 3 pick, and now Darnold is a full-fledged member of the New York Jets. This season, ironically enough, in perhaps the sickest way possible, the Jets are in that scenario where they own the 3rd pick in the NFL draft. And I think Kyler Murray, obviously, a lot of things can change between now and the actual NFL draft because today's first rounder could be a 3rd rounder come April. And Kyler Murray, it's going to be very interesting. He's going to be one of the most scrutinized prospects throughout this draft process because, the Giants themselves said it yesterday, or at least a source within the Giants mentioned that Kyler Murray may be, quote, too small for them to choose with the 6th overall pick. And this quarterback class, it's nothing compared to last year's class where, it was very flashy, big names all over the place. You look at this year's quarterback class, you're dealing with Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones. So there are 4 quarterbacks now, including Murray, who could be taken in the 1st round alone this coming April. So what I think the Jets are going to do, I think they're going to keep an eye on Murray's progress and see if he's able to shoot himself up the draft boards. Because if he's available for the taking in the top 5, a team is going to, they're going to try to want to pounce on that. You look around the NFL right now, and there are several teams right now where I think pretty much every single team, not every single team, but a good majority, I want to say, let's say 24, 26 teams have a quarterback on their roster that they envision is going to be the starting quarterback within the next 3 to 5 years. Exceptions to that, I think, are the Giants, Eli Manning. This is probably going to be his last season. The Denver Broncos, including with that big trade of Joe Flacco. Flacco is a stopgap, but I don't think he's going to be the quarterback in the next 3 to 5 years with that squad. The Washington Redskins have a big decision to make in terms of Alex Smith. Smith, thank God he's recovering from that brutal injury he suffered suffered this season, but I don't think the Redskins are going to want to go into the offseason with, Josh Johnson, Mark Sanchez, or Colt McCoy as their franchise starter. So there are going to be teams that are going to be pining for that number 3 pick, for the chance to make their own destiny at the quarterback position. I think it's going to be very intriguing for the Jets. They're going to be fielding many offers this offseason. Who knows if we'll take one? Stay tuned and find out.
And last one before we get you out of here, Geoff. The Jets and Giants have really never traded in terms of the draft before,
right?
And they did not chat last year. Does it make sense? And the Jets could have a similar 6-3 swap and get a bevy of picks back that could help this team and deliver the Giants their franchise quarterback. Do you foresee that happening?
I think it's certainly possible. I wouldn't call it a guarantee. There's nothing even close to a guarantee in today's NFL, especially when it comes to the draft. But here's an interesting stat I came across. I believe it was pointed out by Dane Brugler of The Athletic earlier this week. I found it on Twitter. The last 11 quarterbacks chosen in the first round were selected by a team that traded up to select that quarterback. So that was very interesting to me, and I definitely think that the two teams, they'd be willing to put their New York differences aside, at least for a temporary quote-unquote alliance in terms of making a trade. Now, Giants-Jets, it's a rivalry almost in name only, literally, with the New York, because how much of a rivalry can you be when you only see each other once every 4 years, including this upcoming season? That's going to be one of the more interesting games on both the Jets and Giants docket. And of course you have the Snoopy Bowl, but come on, does a preseason NFL game equate to, say, the Subway Series? I don't think so. But in terms of this, I don't think it's a guarantee, of course, but I definitely think that the two teams are going to have some great discussions this offseason. Of course, the Giants are still hearing about, taking Saquon Barkley over all the quarterbacks, including Sam Darnold, available to them with the number 2 pick in last year's draft. Of course, the Jets took Darnold, and the rest so far is history. Well, maybe it's very recent history, but I digress. I think that the two teams are going to engage in some interesting discussions, and if the Jets can find a deal, some more evidence that they can hang over the Giants, as if to say, you should have taken a quarterback at 2, I think they're going to take it, especially if it brings them more building blocks for the future. I'm still in the camp that the Giants made the right decision in taking Saquon Barkley at number 2. He's just that much of an athlete. He's just that much of a talent that I think the Giants, made the right move there. But if the Jets can gain anything that they can hold over the Giants' heads in terms of that faithful decision last season, I think they'll take it, especially if they can move forward with some great building blocks for the future.
Geoff, I want to thank you as always for joining us on the show. Great to have you back, and look forward to our chat next week.
Paul, I want to thank you as always for having me on the show. Take care. Keep up the great work.
Will do. Appreciate that. Confess Your Sins is up next right here on the Score 1260. Don't go anywhere. More coming up.
Thanks, guys.